morning and welcome. I am Tanisha Johnson, and on behalf of Rock the Future, we welcome you to the Teach Rochester website launch. Before we begin, I'd like to take this moment to introduce our courageous and awesome Rock the Future Alliance Director, Eldridge Jackie Campbell.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and thank you so much for joining us for the Rock the Future official launch of the Teach Rochester website. Rock the Future is a community collaborative, a partnership of organizations and individuals, including parents and youth, working collectively to improve youth educational outcomes. We thank our partners, the Charitable Foundation, Rochester City School District, Monroe Community College, and many others for their partnership and engagement in the Teach Rochester website and future engagement as we work collectively to teacher diversity in Rochester. Thanks again, and I turn it back over to Tanisha to take us through the Teach Rochester website.
Thank you, Eldridge. For such a time as this, children seeing reflections of themselves in educational spaces is a topic that has been discussed for decades. We know the importance, we know the impact for students of color to have not only an educational experience, whereas the cultural pedagogy is relatable to their experience, but just as important is the richness in having teachers of color part of that experience. And so, in 2018, the Max and Marion Farish Charitable Foundation partnered with Education First to conduct a citywide teacher pipeline analysis. Education First established its project goals as follows: to provide detailed information about Rochester's teacher talent ecosystem, to identify areas of strength that can be built upon, and the gaps and challenges that need to be addressed as it relates to Rochester's teacher pipeline, and also to develop strategic recommendations that account for Rochester's unique contacts so that stakeholders can utilize these recommendations in order to build a more robust teacher pipeline. In order to meet those goals, Education First organized 4 work groups around different pipeline topics and then charged an advisory group to focus on equity efforts across the work groups. The 4 work groups that were established are the Teacher Recruitment Work Group, focused on increasing the number of candidates, especially candidates of color entering teacher preparation programs. The Clinical Experience Work Group, whose focus is to improve the quality of the clinical experience and to formalize the student-teacher placement process. The third work group is the New Teacher Excellence Work Group, whose focus is to increase the number of new teachers who are well prepared to teach Rochester students. And the fourth work group is the Educator Diversity Work Group, focused on strategies that will increase the number of teachers of color in Rochester. One of the key outcomes in 2019 for the Teacher Recruitment Work Group was the Teach Rochester website. First slide, please. The web address is teachrock.org. And so we know our beloved affinity to having rock at the core of a lot of work that takes place in Rochester. And so we did not veer away from that, and we decided to go with that website. So the website is teachrock.org. Next slide, please. Through the efforts of the Teacher Recruitment Work Group, the goals established were focused on adopting a citywide strategy for diversity in addition to developing recommendations for district and school leaders to attract and hire teachers of color. That process included selecting a vendor to develop the Teach Rochester website and to be engaged in the content for the site. In front of you, you see the list of the advisory members who contributed to this part of that process. With the hard work of all partners engaged connected to this project, the Teacher Recruitment website was launched this past November. And slide, please. 2 of the primary user needs were established for this website. First, that teacher candidates in or from the Rochester region had a simple way to search for jobs in Rochester, and in doing so, connecting qualified teacher candidates, particularly those of color, with available teacher positions in Rochester K-12 schools. Second, that Rochester residents who want to become teachers know how to pursue certification, and in doing so, showing the various pathways and relevant programs for those interested in becoming a teacher. And so as we take you through the various aspects of the website, Strategies 360's work with great intentionality with our partners to ensure that the identity of Rochester, its rich history, and its culture are all reflected on the site. Before we go to the site, I want to take a moment to stop here and ask if there are any questions with regards to this project. And we invite you to please drop those in the group, in the chat. Wonderful. I think everybody is ready to see the site. And so seeing that there are no questions at this point in time, I invite you to go ahead and drop your questions in the chat, and we will make sure we cover those at a couple different points during and following this presentation. And so without further ado, we are excited to introduce you to the Teach Rochester website. As you look at the site, you'll notice that the site is divided into a few different ways. We wanted to ensure that we added the flavor of Rochester, so there's an Explore Rochester section. We also wanted to give some history around the education landscape in Rochester, as well as having information on how to become certified, how to search for jobs, and our About Us page shares more about our advisory group and information on Rock the Future. I wanted to also share that working with Strategies 360, it was really a pleasure, because a lot of the information that you will see on this website, a lot of the pictures, all of the pictures are reflections of members of our Rochester community. And so with that, this is our homepage, Become the Teacher Who Inspired You. So we wanted to ensure that as you look at the website, that any teacher who is sitting in New York State, in Rochester, across New York State, across the country, or even outside of the country, that there is a reflection of who Rochester is, Rochester's identity. And so this is the homepage. We were also able to get a couple of narratives from teachers that currently teach in our charter schools and Rochester schools. Most of our time this morning is going to be centered on the becoming a teacher, exploring the pathways. Before we go there, I do want to take you to a few other pages. When the user goes to Education in Rochester, they'll be able to see the history of education. They'll be able to look at the demographic of Rochester City School District and charter schools, and then they'll be able to see information on teacher preparation programs. The intentionality around reflecting programs in Rochester is so that a high school student or someone that is considering Rochester, that they know, and that our students, especially, we want our students to know that we have the greatest schools, top schools in the country, right in Rochester, New York. In addition to that, we complete this section of the website with having a listing of all of Rochester's K-12 schools. And so I'll take you to the history of education first. These pictures are reflective of Rochester, more so during the 60s, the rise of the 60s. Speaks to what was taking place at that time with education, specifically the Rochester City School District, and also gives demographic information on Rochester currently. Further, there's information included on the history of charter schools in Rochester. We thought it was important to include that history so that people have a good idea as to when did the charter school movement begin in Rochester. We know that continues to expand with the new charter school opening in the fall. And so we thought it was important to include that history as well. The by the number section is the demographic information of our schools. of Rochester City School District and Rochester Charter Schools. It includes information on the average teacher salary, average years in the city school district. And then for RCSD, it specifically goes into the demographic population of Rochester. Who are our students and their families at home? And then there's a section that's specifically focused on our charter students. We thought it was important to also include the New York State report card so that those that are going to this website can actually get an idea as to where Rochester schools stand in accordance to New York State and all other schools in the state. The Explore Rochester tab, which is really gives a little bit of the identity of Rochester. We couldn't capture everything. And I also wanted to share, if I haven't yet, that this website is continually being developed and updated with pictures, with Rochester's history, and with some of the changes that are taking place right now in Rochester. And so the Explore Rochester section includes information on the movements that took place with Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony. Of course, the fact that Rochester is like the home of we say, the millennial city, and the vibrant culture. We know Rochester to be vibrant and thriving with a variety of cultures in its community. And also of great importance, if someone is looking to relocate to Rochester and would like to know, where do I go to see myself, especially a person of color that's going to be teaching or considering teaching. And so we thought it was important to include the Black-owned business directory, as well as a list of resources for educators of color. So where are the spaces? That's one of the first things I know when I relocated. I wanted to know, where can I find me or that safe space, and especially businesses that reflect me and what it is that I need and what my family needs are. So we wanted to make sure we included that. We have information on the fact that Rochester is a place with affordable living and housing. And so that's just one layer of what's included on this site. One of the other aspects is finding a job. So I'll take you to this page briefly before we go to Explore Rochester. This page actually includes the profile of the city school district and all of the charter schools. And so not only does it take a user to the career page, but it also gives information on the district and the school profile, so that someone looking to apply to jobs at these particular schools and for the Rochester City School District, that they have a good idea as to what they need to know around student culture, around demographic information, all those little things that are included in the school profile and the district profile. Before we go on to the pathway section of this website, which is where a lot of our users will visit, I want to take a moment to see if there are any questions at this time. Looking at comments. Wonderful. All right. And so I will continue sharing our site. So I guess one of my favorite parts of this website is the teacher preparation programs and how to become a teacher. And so under becoming a teacher, we have pathways, and then there's information on how to become certified, how to find a program, and of great importance is how can someone that would like to go into teaching get financial support. As a sidebar note, there was a lot of discussion around how do we encourage paras that are in our schools, how do we encourage teacher assistants and those who are up close and personal, support people who are important to our students, specifically our students of color. How do we encourage them to go into teaching? And so the website is designed to actually provide all that information for a person who is looking to going into teaching, and for someone who currently has their certification but may need to consider other steps and keeping that certification within eligibility requirements for New York State. And so I'll take you to the Explore Pathways page. This particular part of the site answers a lot of questions on all of the pathways to initial teaching certification. It's a very complicated process, to say the least. I have taught in Rochester. I was a school counselor, educator in Rochester City School District. I remember what it was like going through the process of contacting New York State Education. My alma mater, the college at Brockport, was very helpful and supportive in helping us as students maneuver that process. But we recognize everyone does not have that experience. So the purpose of this particular part of the site is to include every pathway to becoming a teacher. So if I'm a high school student, we wanted to make sure that that part of their experience is included here. If I have some college experience or an associate's degree, we have another pathway that they can look at where it will list eligibility requirements and where they can filter out the information they need in order to find the appropriate program. And then you'll see here all of the other pathways. There are a total of 10 pathways. Everything from a teacher who educated outside of the US and has foreign teacher credentials, to a teacher who completed a preparation program in New York State, but is coming from a different, is trying to get a different level of certification, from initial to or provisional to permanent certification. And it also includes information for those who are looking to relocate from one state to New York State. And what does that process look like? So we wanted to make sure whatever the pathway, that answer can be found here in this section. And so I'll take you to that. So if I'm a high school student, I will click here and see a reflection of myself. So again, that whole part about intentionality, we wanted to make sure we included students so they can see themselves in this section. We do want to encourage students to pursue teaching. And it's not to say that we don't want them to explore outside of Rochester. I think that some of our students are not aware that some of the best teaching programs are right in their backyard. And so we want to encourage that. And we also will be including information for current teacher pathway programs in high schools, East High School being one of those. So if I'm a high school student, this pathway pretty much gives me information on what I need to know. We know students are going to say, what's the first thing I need to know if I want to teach? And these are the requirements in order to teach in New York State. As they go further down, they'll be able to see what route they can take to get there. And so we have students that may want to start and go right into a 4-year program. We have students that decide they want to go to a community college first and transfer to a 4-year college. And then we have students who say, I want a fast-tracked option where I'm combining a bachelor's and a master's program. So this part of the pathway for high school students gives them that information. And then as they scroll further down and visit the actual program tool, it will take them to the Find a Program page where they can narrow down their options. And here is where all of our Rochester, Greater Rochester higher educational institutions are listed. So if I'm a student and I'm interested in Robert's Wesleyan program, there's information on the type of program it is, the type of degree that they will complete, whether it's initial or professional certification, and what type of program. Is it traditional? Is it online? Is it hybrid? In order to narrow this down more, students could look right here to the left and apply these filters. And so they could apply, they want a traditional program, focused on initial certification. And let me look at bachelor programs. And once they apply that filter, it will pull up the schools with that program. What I love about this also is once they click on the institution, it gives a little bit of information as it relates to the actual program. And so it will share with them the type of degree, the admission requirements. When they go to the actual website for the college, it will take them to the program page. And then it really speaks to whether or not this is a combined program. So for the student that wants to fast track bachelor's to master's, it will have that information here, in addition to the content areas, which is very important for students who say, you know, I want to be a science teacher, or I want to focus on early childhood. Another cool thing about the website is that in this drop-down box, I don't have to go all the way back up to explore pathways to go to a different pathway. Once I'm here, I can actually utilize the drop-down space right here, and I can pull up that whichever pathway applies to me. And so maybe I have a bachelor's degree in a field other than teaching. We know with this pandemic, people are doing a lot of self-reflection around their careers, around whether or not they want to stay in the career that they're in. And we have a lot of people that said, you know, I was an engineer for a long time, but I've always wanted to teach. And so this particular pathway is for the person with a bachelor's degree in another field outside of teaching. And it literally lists, without the filter, all of the programs that are available in Rochester, all of our colleges, all of the schools, all of the programs, all of the different types of programs, some having an online hybrid. Some of them also speak to how many weeks and modules for non-traditional pathways. And again, a person that is looking to filter can go to this section here and filter down. Click on the college or the program that they're interested for that college and see more information, including the type of degree and what that program is. If I wanted to go back to the pathways as opposed to using the Dropbox, I would just go right back to Explore Pathways. And one of the last sections that I will show you is a really big one, is someone that would come from maybe Baltimore schools and is looking to relocate to Rochester. We have that happening quite a bit. We have a lot of people looking at Rochester as a place where they want to live, and specifically in teaching. And so when someone comes to that pathway, which is pathway 9, this actually gives them information like, I currently have a teaching certification, but I'm sorry, this is the one that is if you're from another US state or territory, but it still applies. And so we'll give them information that leads to their initial certification. We ensured that when a user goes to this website, that they are not looking at this website as, this is where I need to go to get certified. We have included all of the links to the New York State education website. We wanted to ensure that when a user goes here, that this is a hub, a one-stop shop for information they need to know, but where they need to go to begin that process, we've included the links to New York State education. We also ensured that we included local information such as Monroe One BOCES and the teacher certification department that is there to support current teachers and those that have questions about teaching certification. And so when someone goes to when a user goes to the certification section, this is where all of the information is on eligibility requirements, the different certificates and requirements for New York State, how to actually apply, and if there are questions specifically like local questions, we've listed that information in addition to the phone number. Although we recommend emailing, there can be a 2-hour wait on New York State Education's phone line sometimes, but the direct email is there, and I've had great success emailing about my own certification. And so we wanted to make sure we included that, as well as including the website for more information. The other section that I wanted to show is the getting financial support. where we are right now, and we know that we have a moratorium on student loans and until, I believe, another several months, maybe until September. Don't quote me on that. It keeps changing, which is a good thing because of given the time that we're in with this pandemic. But we also know that there is aid that people need to go to school, to go back to school, to go to college, or to complete their certification. So we wanted this to be an area where where the user could get direct information on the different grants that are available, the teacher loan forgiveness. I'm actually a teacher loan forgiveness candidate, and hopefully it stays there once I get to my my time frame. It's if this is the same one, yeah. If you serve full time for 5 years, you get a portion of your loans that are wiped away. So I'm looking forward to that. But that takes them to the page where they get more information because it's not automatic. There is paperwork that has to be submitted to the district that they're working for, or in some cases a non-for-profit where education can still count for that particular program. Additionally, the FAFSA site is included and all the other grants that we could find out there for those looking to become a teacher, as well as the Teach Grant program. So there's federal aid, we included the state aid, incentives, and of course, TAP. And so with that, that is kind of an overview of Teach Rochester, teachrock.org. And the last page again is really speaks to all the job opportunities. And we included some information about us. I will stop one more time to see if there are any questions. Okay, so one of the questions I see is, if an educator wanted to expand their knowledge, how would they find out about other educational opportunities at other college institutions? That's a great question. And so on the Teach Rochester website, and thank you, Sister Eva, for your question. On the Teach Rochester website, the focus is specifically on Rochester colleges, however, or area colleges, Rochester area colleges. However, when they go to the website, it will take them to the program, but there's also a way that they can go when they're on that college's website. They can go to the other aspects of that website and what's offered at that particular college. So each college has been submitting information. So Rock the Future, as host of this website, we will be updating that information as it comes in. We know that there are a couple of colleges that are expanding their programs. There is also conversation amongst the Rochester area colleges, those that are at the table, that are discussing affinity spaces for teachers of color and how that process will look. That's information that will be included so that an educator of color, or one that is interested in becoming a teacher, they'll know that these are particular schools that are offering support for me as well. But the additional educational opportunities are listed by each college's website. I hope that answers your question. If someone, thank you, Sister Frida. If someone is seeking a teacher position but does not know about opportunities in Rochester, how do they find this site? Are you promoting this widely on platforms mostly utilized by people of color? Absolutely. And so that was my final pitch, which I'll go to now. We are asking, and I know that Jessica, our communications specialist for Rock the Future, is going to be dropping in the links to this site. But we are asking, in whatever agency that you have, to please share this site on your website, share it with your networks. There is intentionality around recruitment efforts. So while this is one layer of what the teacher recruitment work group had as its outcome for this past year, the building of how do we continue to, that's like teachrock.org 2.0. is now how do we make sure we get this out far and wide? And so we're asking our partners to help with that. We're asking those who are part this morning, and we'll be publishing the website in all spaces. We also invite you to, great question, On the About Us page, there's information on Rock the Future. And so if you subscribe to our newsletter, you'll receive information about Rock the Future. But that page also has information on our advisory group members, information on their institutions, and where additional questions, if you have those, can be asked. But they're also promoting it on their sites as well. And the moratorium on loans, to clarify, is now until October 1st. Awesome. I'm in that number. Many of us are. How is East High School's TLI, Teacher Preparation Program, incorporated in this work? Good question. We are actually going to be uplifting that work that's taking place at East High School, and we're going to be including information on the program, specifically on the high school section, on the high school pathway section, which is Pathway 1 on the website. So yes, that program will be lifted, but in addition to that, it's not just about adding it there, but there's the conversation that's taking place at our table with how do we encourage students to consider teaching as a pathway. When you talk to a lot of students back in the day, I'm an 80s baby, grew up in New York, my teachers were Black and brown. So of course, my language was, I'm gonna be a teacher. Today, a lot of students will say, teaching, with everything going on, I don't wanna be a teacher. Some students even laugh at the idea. And so in doing this work at our tables, in this particular space for the Teacher Pipeline Project, we're actually addressing what are the opportunities currently available in schools. We're also aware that Madam Mayor had a program, I want to say a couple of years ago. I took students to the city, to City Hall, and there was a career in teaching panel discussion. There were colleges that had information about their teacher programs there. Madam Mayor Lovely Ann Warren spoke to the importance of teaching and that students should consider teaching as a career. And so that's another conversation that we're having. How do we partner also with the city and with the district and with charter schools and with Rochester schools? When we say Rochester schools, this process is inclusive of charter schools, and we're also talking about what about our private and parochial schools as well? And how do we get the message out to encourage students to go into teaching? And so that's part of a larger discussion that will happen at these work group tables as they continue their work in this current year. Will there be recruitment fairs in person and or virtual be posted? Absolutely, yes. We know that we are going to be post-COVID, post-pandemic, as much as it may not feel that way. So the hope is that we have those opportunities. But in the meanwhile, these are things that we're going to take back to our table. How do we have a virtual recruitment fair specifically for teachers? How do we have a virtual career and teaching fair for those that want to consider teaching? And how do we do that? How do we do a fair that's focused specifically on young students, on high school students? And as a school counselor, I have to say this, the conversation around careers doesn't begin in high school. We want that conversation to happen when students are younger. So how do we bridge the teacher pipeline conversation in our Rochester schools, starting with younger students? How do we foster that interest and not wait until they're in high school to have the conversation? All of that is going to be continued in the teacher pipeline project work. Thank you, Ms. Lee. This is an awesome resource for our community. How is school profile information maintained and updated? Great question. So I am going to be Rock the Future as the host home for this site, working in partnership with all these courageous human beings taking up this work. We'll be sending information to Rock the Future to update. I actually just received an update a couple of days ago, which I'll be working on this week. And so as school profile information is maintained and updated, that would be right here. We'll be, so as the information comes out and we get updates from higher education institutions, as well as our schools, we'll be updating the website on a continual basis. And so as we share the website, I'm gonna probably be in there almost every day or so. Actually, I just updated it last night with some pictures, but there'll be continuous improvement around this process. There'll be continued partnership efforts on what else do we need to do to get the word out about the website. what information needs to be updated on a frequent basis, which is why we did not want to be the hub for how to get certified, but provide the link to where they get that information, because New York State Ed requirements could change and we didn't want to have a shade of gray. So the website is going to be updated continuously, and that will be by Rock the Future. There's a question about housing in Rochester. I'll get to that in one moment. I see another question in front of me. Is there a possibility to add a link for candidates to access our ABC Career Jobs website? Absolutely. So if you have, if you are a partner that, or any entity that has career and job fair information, yes, please, if we could share the link to where that information can be sent directly, I will, we'll make sure we share the Gmail where that can be sent to Rock the Future, so that you can share the flyer, share the information, and that can go on the jobs, the Find a Job section of the website. So yes, we can include that information. If you have that available now, absolutely send that over. And Jessica, if you could include my email address, please, that would be great. If you could send that information over, we can include it on the website. We know that as you begin to look at the website and review it, you'll see some things that you're saying, okay, I want to give them feedback around this. We welcome the feedback. One of the challenges that we had was looking at the history of Rochester, getting more historical pictures of Edison Tech before its new expansion, and Franklin High School and some of the other high schools with such a rich history. We're looking for old photos and other pictures that we can upload to show more of the identity of Rochester. And so I do have to say that although Rochester is always going to be my home, I'm not currently there, and I've relocated, that there is a richness to, as we were doing this process, there's a lot of great about Rochester. And so I do want to share that. We hear a lot of negative information coming from my hometown, and it's heartbreaking. But we also know we have a lot of bright spots, and we want to lift those areas up. So if you have information specifically focused on job fairs dedicated around teaching or educator positions, we want you to share those. If you have photos that you think, hey, this photographer I know, with their permission, I want to make the connection so that we can get more of the flavor of Rochester's identity on the website, we welcome that. You mentioned housing in Rochester. Will the site include the incentive that the city offers for educators? Oh, yes. Dr. Golden, living my life like it's golden. Absolutely. Thank you for your question. And you are our partner in this work. And I thank you for asking that question, because I missed mentioning that. So yes, the city incentives will be included, because we think it's also important that as we attract people to living in Rochester or teaching in Rochester, what we want is also for teachers to consider living in the city of Rochester. I always said our family anthem was, we worked, lived, played, prayed, and served in the city of Rochester. And we made no bones about that. We were really serious about that. We think it's important to be of the community, especially when you're teaching or when you're an educator. It's great for students. You know, I can't tell you how many times, you know, when I first started my school counseling career, I lived on Durnan Street, and students would walk with me to Franklin. I didn't have a car. We didn't have a car yet when I was starting off at Franklin as a school counselor. And students would see me and say, wait a minute, Miss Johnson, you live over by Roycroft. They would see me, and to say how the relationships developed, and those students who are now adults, and some of them I still keep in touch with, they remember that experience of having an educator. My school counselor lives in the city. Wow. And the same thing on Norton Street. We would have a lot of students walk by. My husband worked at the charter school. A lot of the students knew where he lived. And it felt good for them to know that they had an educator in their building who not only cared about them, but who was really, as students would say, about that life. Like Mr. Johnson, Miss Johnson don't play. They really do, you know, they believe in this community. And so there are a lot of great things about Rochester, and we want to make sure that we include information on the city's incentives. And we also want to include, if it's still available, we'll have to double check that. And Dr. Golden, you can probably help me get that information. There are other incentives available that were available at one point through the district. And so any incentive information, we'll be putting that information up. With regards to mentoring program, yes, schools that have, there would be a mentorship component. We haven't quite had that discussion. We've had more discussion around mentorship for teachers or those that are becoming teachers and teacher programs right now, like affinity spaces, ensuring that they have a safe space to have a mentor that reflects who they are, to share their experience as a person of color becoming a teacher. And also this particular part of the project is, we're speaking to today, is about the teacher recruitment work group. But then we have the client experience work group and a couple of the other work groups where we're lifting up this whole discussion around affinity spaces, having a mentoring component and how important that is. Yes. My mentor when I started was Danny Vega, who was an incredible school counselor. He took me to the School of Hard Knocks and I believe was very instrumental in the counselor that I became in the district. And so we think that's important. Will this site be shared with HBCU colleges and other colleges outside of Rochester, New York? Absolutely. So there'll be continuous conversations on how do we get the word out to the HBCU colleges. We know that we have the yearly fair. We don't know how that's going to look come next fall, if it will be virtual, if it will take place. But that's a big baby for the Rochester City School District. And of course, we would want to have information, whether it's virtual or not, that we are sharing information about this site, but also getting the information out to those colleges. And so there is a continued conversation around recruitment and definitely making the reaches to those Black and brown spaces where educators are. And this is not just for in this country. You know, we have an educator who's in Australia that's from Rochester. And so wherever this can reach, we want it to go to attract more people to consider teaching in Rochester, specifically teachers of color. Can the website be made available in other languages, particularly Spanish and or Chinese? Thank you for your question, Ms. Sweet. We will put that, all of these we're taking to put in our Teach Rochester Launch 2.0. So yes, the translation to Spanish did come up, and we're going to have another follow-up discussion about that. That's a question that I have. It's been asked more recently, and we can also look at considering other languages. So that's something that I want to take back to Education First, who's the lead consultants for this work, and who are supporting Rock the Future and all of our partners and advisory members around how we continue to improve the website and making it available and ensuring that it's inclusive to the user. Thank you for your question. Yes, because of the need of bilingual teachers, that is very important. Absolutely. And thank you so much, Pete, my colleague. This is amazing. Are there any plans to extend the listings to community-based pre-K Head Start in the future? Yes, they are. So all of this, we're actually doing in the process of having our advisory group meeting, which will be later this month in February. So these are all take backs in terms of how do we improve, you know, as we're talking about the website. And now that it's completely fully launched, we know all of this feedback that's coming in terms of how are you going to share it? How are you going to extend listings? Thank you, Pete. That's a great, it's important for us to include that. And it's funny because being a member of the TCA family, I can't believe I missed the pre-K Head Start listings, extending the listings to them as well. That is definitely something that we want to make sure we include. Thank you. I believe I answered all questions. We still have a few more minutes. I'm not sure. Oh, have you thought about launching a commercial related to this website to get the word out? Let's do it. I'm all in. I can't speak for the whole advisory group, but I love that idea because I think once we get a commercial going and putting it out there, people are looking more at video. That's the wave that we've been on in terms of this tech world, is that people are taking more time to look at videos than reading content. And so, yes, launching a commercial related to the website to get the word out, I love that idea. Thank you, Sister Eva. We will take that back to our group and have those discussions on how we can make that happen. Thank you so much. Yes, so please share the website far and wide. And I'm going to ask my colleague, Jessica Lewis, if there are any other questions I missed, please let me know. Ms. McNabb asks, what about the ENL population? So yes, ELL, I'm thinking just in English language learners, absolutely. So the website, when, I don't know if I should pull it back up or if you're able to pull it up, when you go to the find a pathway or go to the area where the colleges have listed their information, there is information on what bilingual programs are available. But for the ELL population in specific, I don't know if you mean, is the website going to reflect programs specifically for ELL, or if we're speaking to what colleges currently have in existence for their programs. But this is another area where we'll need to talk about that and see what we need to do to update the site to ensure that we have the ELL population represented by program availability at the higher ed institutions, and even just general questions. And we'll make sure we do that. Thank you. And consider a section for family and parent engagement. Absolutely, we do want to consider that. And so thank you, Dr. Golden. It would be good to have that as part of the website, because parents can go to that particular space, and there's information that we can include there where they can encourage their children or encourage the children in their lives around teaching, but also so they can consider teaching as well. Because the pathways that are listed is really for every person that's looking for a career in teaching. So the parent engagement feature, it would be great to add as a tab. Thank you, Dr. Golden. And it looks like those are all the questions that we have today. Again, we have our email address, and you can reach me at tjohnson@thechildrensagenda.org, and I can get you I can share more information with you. And you can reach out to Rock the Future for more information. On behalf of Rock the Future, we thank you, all of you helping us to lead this work, the community, our partners, Education First, the Max and Marian Farish Charitable Foundation, and Strategies 360. Our ask, again, of all in this space today is to get the word out in whatever agency you have. Share it on the link on your website, share it with your networks, chat it up with your parents and caregivers in your circle, share it with your students, and take a look at it for yourself. And so for many exploring teaching, we want them to start here. Teachrock.org. And you know how we do, there's no K at the end. Teachrock.org. So thank you for your time and engagement today. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay encouraged. We're in this together. Have a great day.